know that I'll bring the funny, but I'll try.
Okay. Yeah. Sweet. Well, we'll pay attention in the next minute here as people start to flow back in. Oh, there's
Thank
Liz
you.
right now.
Hi.
All right, hey, friend. Are you going to introduce Corey? Will you?
Yes, I am. Sorry, just hopped out of the last session, and
do you need a minute? Do you need a minute to breathe?
No, I think we're live. So
okay.
Oh.
All right. I know Daniela is going to be joining us.
Can you see me or hear me?
Yes. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to give us just a couple seconds as we finish the cohort work session and jump into this session. So just give us about 30 more seconds and we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Well, hello there, and welcome back to our main stage plenary session. We hope that you have enjoyed the sessions this morning thus far.
Yes, it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. And for this session, we have Dr. Corey Welch. Corey is a STEM director at Iowa State University. He's a lifetime Sockness member and a former board member. He's joining us today to share his wisdom on recognizing your strengths. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you. I'm going to basically be really informal. And so I'm going to just talk about some things about values and things, a little bit about maybe some of my career stages and things. But ultimately, I don't want to talk a ton. I'd rather kind of get into kind of Q&A things. And so I'm going to talk about some of my values and how that's helped shape the career path I've been on. I'll give a little background about myself. I'm originally from Montana. I'm a member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe, first generation. Kara Hayes lurking from Berkeley. I see that. Nice in the chat. And I'm from a low-income background. I'm a biologist by training, so I went through the PhD, did a master's and a PhD, and a postdoc. And at one point, taught at a tribal college. I was intending to go into trying to become a tribal college faculty. And through a couple of different life things happening, I've been doing basically, I gave up research about 12 years ago and have been working on student development. I worked at a really amazing program at UC Berkeley. That's where I met Kara Hay from Berkeley, who's in the chat. And I ripped off that program and brought it to Iowa State when my wife got a job here. And so I'm happy to talk about the two-body problem and some of those kinds of things and challenges as well. But in thinking about these sorts of things around values and, you know, here's kind of a trite statement of kind of what my values are. Is it's the campground rule. Leave it better than you found it. And that's kind of my, you know, bumper sticker, back of my truck kind of statement. The other thing that I always say about the work I do, and I say this to my students, and it's from the movie Godfather. There's this famous quote, you know, it's not personal, it's just business. And I call BS on that. It's just not. The professional is personal to me. The work I do has impact for my family, my community, and my tribe and students across the country that are from low-income, first-gen, minoritized backgrounds. So those are kind of my big values when I think about problem solving. And the research shows that if you are doing work that doesn't align with your values, you're more likely to leave, even after a PhD. So that value alignment and where you work and the work you do needs to be something to think about. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not living my values right at the moment. All right, is that a short-term thing so I can get these stupid letters by my name and I can move on to the next thing? Then you can be very intentional around your career with that framing. but doing that kind of work is actually hard work to make sure your value alignment stays with you. Another thing that people often talk about is, what's your work-life balance? How do you coordinate these sorts of things? And for me personally, when I was doing research, I had a hard time turning my brain off at night. I always felt like, I should be back in the lab, or I should be reading that next paper. And the reality is there's too many papers for you to read. And I'm not saying you don't keep grinding at it, but getting off the research hamster wheel for me, I was able to turn my brain off a bit at night, and I didn't always feel guilty about what I was doing or not getting done. Now, after I left research, I switched to this student development work. There's a huge literature, and I'm still reading it. And so I still, work many nights, but I'm not as stressed out in the same way. And that was kind of just finding a balance for myself. And I will say this: I've pulled all-nighters a couple of times in the past year. I do it all the time. It's just something. Sometimes it works better for me to just go ahead and crank. I'm not going to sleep till the next day. It's a little harder when you're getting older, but it's still a general thing. So it just talked a little bit about values and things, and feel free to put stuff in the Q&A around some of those sorts of things. I'd like you to just maybe take 1 minute, and I'll put a little timer going. Take a minute and write down a couple of things. I want you to write down, what are your 2 or 3 top values? What do you value? Don't think about it hard. Just like, boom, what are the first couple things that pop into your head? And if after you've kind of got a couple of those written down, write down in 5 words or less, what's the dream career? And I'm not going to have you do much with this other than I want you to go through that exercise. Yeah, leading with kindness and passion, integrity, helping people through my work. Those are core values completely. And that's great. Building up that social capital. Great. Those are lovely quotes, and I like that. One thing that I'll talk about that I've heard other people, and I really like this statement, and I'll kind of work on some of the questions. Particularly if you're an undergrad or grad student, it is not your job to fix the diversity, equity, inclusion problem at your institution or your department. It's not. Do not sacrifice your career. That's what faculty, higher administration, and staff are to do. Now, does that mean you don't get involved and you just focus on your own stuff? No, but you do diversity, equity, inclusion work because it builds your skills, gives you some DEI receipts, but don't sacrifice on that model. It's just not, I want you to be selfish about enough to get the letters and get to the professional stage so you can move on to the next thing. We've got bigger work ahead of you. And so try to keep that in mind. It's hard because it's like, man, I know I can have a big impact. I know there's students that are hurting, that are going to come behind me that I could have really helped if I sacrificed in this area. And it's not going to work well for you professionally to burn all these calories on things that may not work, show up on your resume or your CV. And so that's that push-pull part of, man, I want to help, I want to have these skills, but I gotta protect myself. And so think along those lines around that. I won't belabor the point any further. I think other things that I'll say here, how I define success, it changed over my career. 25-year-old me had a very different definition. 18-year-old version of me, get to college, be able to afford college enough to go, not have a child. That was something that was a goal. in the 20s, in my 20s. I saw what the economics of having a kid would do to somebody from my family background. And I just didn't want, I wanted to break that cycle of poverty, at least what I felt was poverty, my definition of it. And so you can make different decisions around that. And that's, again, that's alignment of those, that value with what you're doing. And so, you know, if I look at myself, I've exceeded my wildest dreams of what I could do. I mean, science got me to Australia. I've seen most of the US because of science. I get to talk to you all today. I get to give advice. I help change lives of students through the things. I didn't know I was going to be able to do all of that. One other qualification I will say, you are looking at my story, or a little bit I'm talking about, it's survivorship bias. If you haven't seen that red plane with the dots, Google it, the survivorship bias. It's a great statistical analysis. I think about all the students or people in my family that didn't make it through college or make it through life through, you know, our criminal justice system, those kinds of things. You know, why did I make it? I had support from my family for sure. I'm slippery and creative. That was another thing. I've got white male privilege because I code white, even though I'm Cheyenne. I grew up in that culture and community. I think those are things that helped me, no doubt. And in some ways, I was lucky. I had some advantages and some things that just worked in my favor, that through no skill set of my own. So if I'm reflecting back on all that, I have to think along some of those kinds of alignments. And when I'm working with students, I'm trying to figure out what are some of the internal challenges they might have. What are their family and cultural challenges they may have in higher education and in STEM? And then what are the institutional barriers that they're going to navigate here at Iowa State or in academia or in the culture of STEM? And it's gross on one level is I'm preparing students to navigate a toxic environment. That's where we are, I would argue, when it comes to who does science. And so we have to be really intentional about building up some of these skills so that when they deal with the BS, they're going to have some comfort with batting that away, and so they can continue chasing what they're passionate about. I've rambled quite a bit, and I'll see some of the questions that popped up. Okay, so yeah, why I quit my first PhD. So I did a 4 year master's degree. So I started a PhD at 23, right out of college, took a gap year. The second lab I was ever in was my first PhD lab. And so I didn't know what a good advisor was. I didn't know what I needed. And a couple years in, I realized I was teaching at Haskell for my TA at Haskell Indian Nations University. So I was at University of Kansas. And Haskell's about a mile away, just to give you some. So you could actually, I taught my own intro bio class and labs. That was my TA every semester. So a little more work in the TA front, but it kept me tied to the Native community, which was really wonderful outside of that support network was really useful for when I was at KU. And then that shows us I had a really kind of a crappy advisor. For the record, he's not allowed to have grad students, and I don't think he has for 20 plus years at this point. So it just took me a little while to move past that. So, and when I started my second PhD at University of Washington, my PhD advisor, who I met at Sockness, recruited me to UW, started research with him, and then he got a job offer at another university. And I had the opportunity to join him, but it wasn't as fun a research lab that I was hoping for. And so I have one chapter of my dissertation is working with him. We're still buddies, but you know, I had to scramble and find another lab, which I was asking the same questions. And so it wasn't, it cost me probably a year and added length in my dissertation, just to scramble a little bit, get the money, but the projects were similar. And it was a really good decision for me at that point to do that. 23-year-old of me would not have had that ability to navigate the system. 30-year-old me did. And so that was the distinction for me on that front. So how do I get over thinking about other people's opinions or thoughts when deciding to quit your first PhD? I didn't really think about them, to be honest. I was doing my own self-care on that front. I knew I had a reasonable job to continue teaching at Haskell at the tribal college with my master's degree. And then some other opportunities popped up because of my unique relationship between KU and Haskell that led to developing some other additional administrative skills. So I just kind of kept moving around that. I didn't feel bad about it. And I've seen grad programs, Berkeley, sorry, it slipped out, where I see grad students a lot more weary of sharing that they're not hardcore, I'm R1 faculty, future faculty. And so I would have Berkeley students come, I want to do your job, Corey. How'd you do that? I don't want to share that with my PI, my grad committee, or my peers. And so we would talk about it, but I don't have a nice clean answer around that. So yeah, apologize on that one. And yeah, so I still see my first PhD, when I switched labs, we're still very tight. So the transition from doing research to so when I was a postdoc, my goal was to become faculty member at a tribal college and do small scale conservation research. And I did have a bit of an opportunity to do that, but I was in love with my future wife, and the pay was not great. And so I wasn't sure about that. I ended up getting a 1 to 2 year offer to teach at a liberal arts college in Oregon. That would have I had research going on in Oregon and Washington. So it would have been a pretty good opportunity to continue towards the faculty path. I also got this Berkeley job at the same time towards the end of my postdoc. And I had to make that decision. Do I want to continue on the faculty, or do I want to do the administrative thing? And so within about 3 months of starting that Berkeley job, I was like, I kind of know what I want to do for the rest of my life. I just saw the growth and the opportunity to have big impact. I still got to teach, which I liked. I interacted with students, which I liked. The only thing I was missing was I miss field work, and I still miss field work. I miss going out in nature and chasing animals and plants and being, a zoology geek. The other question part of that was, so how did I leverage my skills around this? So, I think every university in the country should have a person with my skill set working with students in STEM. Because I have a research background, I can give great advice for students about getting into research, navigating grad school or medical school or vet school, those kinds of things. Oftentimes the people who run these kind of student-driven programs are in STEM ed or higher ed programs. They may not have done research. I can talk differently to faculty because of my research background. So there's some added benefits of that. And the other thing is my program is cheap. And so it's very scalable. The Berkeley program has 500 students just in biology and 3,500 alumni. And so those kinds of things is where I saw vision, or if I could try to build that here at Iowa State. So I do have a good skill set that is unique. I'm kind of an academic advisor, but I don't know what it takes to get a genetics bachelor's. I don't want to know what those course requirements are. That's what other people are for. But there's career things that an academic advisor typically can't do that I can do. So that's why I think my skill set as a scientist really helped me carve out this niche at every university that I've ever interviewed for. So there's only a couple of universities that my wife was on the job market. So for the record, my wife was the one they hired. I was the trailing spouse. And so we had a whole approach. So once you got to the interview stage, then I would do my homework on that university and go, all right, what do they have? They have a McNair Scholars. Do they have a MARC? Do they have an IMSD? What's their diversity numbers? How are their students doing? And I would start doing deep dive and talk about this Berkeley program and how I would adapt it and bring it to that institution. The other things that I get to do with my position that through your academic training is useful is I can be a PI on grants here. And so I have some things that I negotiated, so I have a little professional flexibility. I can serve on the board of directors of a Sockness group. I can do I give talks around the country about diversity, equity, inclusion in ecology and evolutionary biology. So those kinds of things they've let me do since I've been here at Iowa State. And I'm rambling about all this stuff I'm doing. Just want you to know, until I did the Sockness Leadership Institute, so after you get your PhD, you can do one of Sockness's leadership institutes. I didn't have a plan to be talking to people from around the country. It was when I was doing my assessment and my values, it was like my self-assessment was like, these are things that I want for myself. I want to have a bigger impact. No one knows who the hell I am. And so I was very intentional over this was in 2012, and it took 3-4 years. And all of a sudden I started to give a few talks nationally. I ran for the board of directors and got on board. And so there's just the little things that have kind of grown that I never would have guessed. I got to speak in DC at the March for Science. That's crazy to me. And so those sorts of things were not initial part of the plan, but became emergent properties because of developing a intentional plan. I'll say something about plans real quick. It's important to make a plan, but not to be beholden by it. It's the Mike Tyson quote. Everybody comes into the ring with a plan, but then you get punched in the face. What are you going to do when you get punched in the face? And as a first-gen low-income Cheyenne, I'm slippery. I'll take a punch and move and adapt and get around that. That's a skill set that's not on my CV and resume. And I guarantee you, if you're minority, first-gen, low-income, and you're at this level right now, you have that already. And so that's a skill set that will guide you through life. It's in your back pocket. And so that's a strength-based skill set that makes you a better scientist, I would argue, a better medical or health professional, a better leader. And so own that as a strength that you have that may not always show up on your CV. I'll give you, though you stayed in academia broadly, what skills did you build in the lab that helped you succeed towards a different route? I didn't realize what I'm doing is human resources in the private sector. So I'd be a really good HR person with some training in that specificity. But it's like, yeah, I'm working on development and mentoring and leadership. And so, I work and play well with others. I've done field projects, leading a team of individuals. I've managed small budgets. And sometimes, and I've helped manage through Sockness some bigger budgets when I was on the board. So those are all adaptable skills to the private sector that, you have to work and manage with if you got a lab manager, you got to work relationships with a PI. The connections you maintain with your community and your family, that communication skill. If you're first gen, you've explained what grad school is or why, hey, mom, dad, I may not be coming. I'm going to be out in the field this summer, or I'm going to go to this conference. You having to navigate all those spaces and communicate that to maintain connection to your family. That's a hell of a skill set when it comes to marketing and selling what you're doing and being able to work and communicate effectively in short windows. Short windows of time that you can talk, elevator type pitches and things. So, all right, let's see some other questions here. Let's see. For someone who doesn't know what they want to do as a career, this is some great research done by a Socknista. Kenny Gibbs has looked at a lot of people are doing career in STEM, in academic training, they start doing that when they're a postdoc, and you really need to start doing it during grad school. So, you know, you may not be able to you have to kind of negotiate that with your department or your committee or your PI, which is, you know, hey, I'd like to shadow a community college teacher, or I want to figure out about nonprofits. The whole shadowing thing, I think, is a great model. Talking to, if you want to curious about my career path, you know, shoot me an email. We'll Zoom. So things like that is just finding out where some of these people are. What do they like about their jobs? What do they hate about their jobs? I can tell you 50 things I hate about my job, but I can tell you the 10 core things that are why I do it. And so I want you to think a little bit about doing that exercise of what is the dream? If money and time weren't the problem, what would you be doing with your time? I know that seems trite and big. It's like, well, okay, well, I want to, you know, I want my toes in the sand in a tropical place drinking Mai Tais all day. Game on, that's fine. It's not ideal, but there's ways to do that, a version of that, in your career path. And what do you value? You know, do you want to have a family? Those are important questions to think about. Are you okay living in a small town? I'm in a small college town. There's some things I love about Ames, Iowa. There's a lot of things that suck about Ames, Iowa. You know, it's not the greatest place in the world on a lot of levels, but there's a lot of freedom to do the things I need to do. The students I need to work with are here, as they are everywhere. And outside of, you know, if I could change a couple of things, it'd be, you know, I wish there was a better Native American population for me to do my program around, or do some Native specific programming things. But it's not here. And so navigating that's kind of been why I stayed good contact with Sockness, why I do things nationally around Native issues. That's why I started a scholarship in my mom's name for my tribe. There's little things like that I actively do that I think if I was at, you know, University of New Mexico or Oklahoma or something where there was a sizable Native population, I might not do some of the same things. And so thinking about that's always, that's a personal value thing that I've had to be intentional about. Two-body problem. How do you balance your life between professional and personal spheres? Balance cultural identity when you always have to correct assumptions. I'm not sure what that last part meant. So you might want to re-ask that. The two-body thing, you know, my wife's a biologist. The data shows that if you're a woman in academia, you're likely to have a spouse also in academia or a partner. And so those are, some places are really good about two-body problem. Like Iowa State, they know this isn't the greatest place to be a single person in your 40s and 50s, this small college town. And they're really good about spousal accommodations. Some schools and programs are just that way. So, yeah. Sorry. You know, my wife, I was the trailing spouse. So the biology department here hired her, and then we pitched my program to them, and they took the bait. Suckers. No, it's been awesome. So, and she's in a really great department that's really supportive of her. She just got tenure. I've, you know, navigated and carved out a bit of a niche for myself, and I'm able to do mostly what I want to do. There's some challenges of being in a red state at this time, but I also, if they banned affirmative action in this country tomorrow, which my program isn't really affirmative action, I'm slippery as hell. I'll get around them. First gen low income students, I'll get my students to color. So I'm not really worried about whatever disingenuous right-wing attacks might happen around STEM. I mean, it sucks. It doesn't make it easier, but I'll you know, I've got ancestors that covered a hell of a lot harder shit than I have. Sorry about the S-bomb, but that's where I'm at. So on that front. Angelique, let's see. How do you demonstrate the value of the activities to the institution? I demonstrate it to my students with consistency and messaging through my website, through our advising advice. The program I run is not, it's never in, I do not give advice that is directional. I don't say, hey, you're going to apply to this. I'm going to say, here's some options. Our big job with the STEM Scholar students and my institution is, can we broaden the awareness of these different career paths? That's what I do with individual students. Now, how do I deal with the institution? I work through my deans. I've gotten through connections and other mini presentations. I've gotten several departments to drop the GRE requirement. These are little pedestrian things that I'm proud of, but I also look at it as, you guys are doing some really minimal, boring ass DEI work here. Because the research is completely clear. My job does not need to exist if we changed how we train students, how we did hiring, retention, promotion, and tenure. And some schools are being real creative about this, and other scientific societies and faculty. I just did a little tweet thread the other day, like 2 days ago, kind of railing about this. Like, you guys are really creative about the research you do, the techniques you apply. You'll drop what you've been historically doing when a new tool comes out. And if I was a STEM education researcher, I'd rip my hair out. See, literally rip my hair out. It's like, this is basic research that you are not adopting about best practices when it comes to DEI in how you do research, and how you teach, and in how you run hiring, promotion, retention, and tenure, and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know how much more time I have, so I'll see what the next question is, and if
yeah, we'll take one more question, Corey, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. Let's see here. Basically, just always having to handle and challenge people's automatic pre-existing assumptions about you. Is this something that blends into over your personal life and professional? Yeah. Look, I've got, let's be honest here. I look white, and you're not going to know I'm Northern Shy unless I tell you. So I don't have to hear it nearly the same as most of the students I work with. So there's that little biased reality that I have. But it does, I deal with racist bullshit occasionally. Where do I hold my tongue, or do I call it out? And some people I call in and things like that. I have a network of friends that I will vent to when shit hits the fan offline. So that's my support network. Everyone's like, can you believe this bullshit? And I will talk about that in a serious way so that I can brainstorm on how to work through the problem, or just get an opportunity to vent. Like, can you believe what I just experienced? And sometimes I'm representing myself, and it's easy to do that. Other times I'm representing Sockness or another org or Iowa State, and I can't put that person on blast because I'm not representing just myself. And so I have to navigate some of those things. The exhausting part of having to deal with people's assumptions, again, you just have to find your support network and hope and push where you can to make the cultures of STEM, of science, private sector, and academia so that it's more welcoming and stuff declines. We all have to burn a lot of calories navigating some basic spaces. And those calories keep you from doing some of the other things that are important to you or that are important to your profession. And so when needed, take breaks. We're running, it's the marathon sprint thing. We're doing a marathon here. And if I look at the next 20 years, my last 20 years as a professional, what I'm excited about is what my now will be doing. And that's the, it's the shade from the oak seed, kind of thing. I'll never get shade from that tree kind of thing. And that's the plan for me that aligns with my values. And so with that, I want to thank you for your time. And I hope you have a great time with CareerCon. And I know Sockness is the first time we're doing this. I know it's going to continue to grow and get better. So I appreciate all of you being our first year guinea pigs.
Thank you so much for your insights, Corey. We truly appreciate you taking the time to speak with us honestly and openly. I know that a lot of our participants truly resonated with what you shared today. And I do also want to share that you can connect with Corey on Twitter. He's got a pretty decent following. So I dropped his Twitter handle in the chat if you all would like to connect with him. So just a few moments from now, you will now begin visiting our partner microsites that will have the representatives from our partners present for you to speak with.
Yes, Liz, can you remind us exactly what a microsite is?
Yes, so this is a lot like visiting an exhibitor booth at the conference like NDI STEM. It's just a virtual format. So it's the perfect time for you to introduce yourself to our partner reps, ask any questions about open positions, workplace culture, DEI initiatives, and so much more. I do want to let you know that we have split up the cohorts to designated microsite visit times. So cohorts 1, 2, and 3 will be visiting during microsite visit 1, which is happening right now. And then cohort 4, 5, 6, and 7, you all will be doing your visits in the afternoon during visit 2. This has been intentionally split to best accommodate the number of reps that we have in their microsite booths during each time.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. Well, we hope you all enjoy your exhibitor visits. Again, thank you so much, Corey. It was awesome to hear from you. So if you aren't scheduled to meet now, this is the perfect time to take a break, grab a snack. I know that's what I'm going to do. And remember, when in doubt, if you're having any technical problems, refresh your browser or visit the help desk. We will see you all later.
Thank you.